Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love these watches, email me. I am tmosso at thewatchbox.com. We're doing 3 shows this weekend, so buckle up. If you see anything you like, this is how you reach out to me. All these watches are for sale, and as always, it's first come, first served. We buy what we sell what we buy, and we love to build inventory. Sell us a watch, sell us an entire collection. We pay cash, we pay fast, we guide you through the process, we make it easy as pushing a button, no upper limit on value paid. We will buy every watch you see here, and we will do it with cash. Again, to buy, trade, or sell, reach out to me. I am tmosso at thewatchbox.com. Let's get started with a wonderful example of a modern Patek Philippe chronograph. This is a full Patek Philippe episode, and I have to say that aside from a couple of companies that make a few dozen or a few hundred watches a year, Patek Philippe really is my favorite brand. There's almost never disappointment, and the huge range of contemporary and historical styles is almost limitless. This is a wonderful example of what the company does so well. This is the 5170G in white gold. We got the Breguet numerals in the white gold watch in 2013. We got this version with the black dial, the Breguets, and the white gold case in 2015. It's 39.4 millimeters in diameter, which is a nice size, and we'll put it on the wrist. It's also a great fit for a smaller wrist. It's actually considerably smaller than the watch that came before it, which was the legendary, but 42 millimeter 5070. The watch is thin, it's relatively short across the wrist, and as you can see, beautifully proportioned. The timepiece has a lovely dial. Black lacquer, white gold leaf style hands, Breguet style Arabic numerals, and if you look carefully, you can see that on the 5170, a characteristic of the caliber 29-535, it's that the pivots for the subregisters are slightly below the plane of the hands at center. Of course, we'll wind it up, we'll get this one going. This watch has all of the modern standards. A lot of folks ask, why don't Patek Philippe watches feature hacking seconds? Well, take a look at this. There you go. The movement's beautifully sized for the case, and as you can see, no compromise. We have instantaneous minute jumping via a unique rack and pawl type system, and we have a 65-hour manual wind power reserve, a 4 hertz beat rate, 6 position adjustment, an overcoil hairspring, a lovely stainless steel lateral clutch, and then a black polished and capped column wheel. The column wheel feel here is world-class. Now, there is a difference of opinion between these folks in Geneva and a Lange und Söhne in Glashütte about how to finish a fine chronograph, but I will tell you, this gives up nothing to Lange in terms of finishing quality or detail, especially when you look at the execution of the bevels and the satination on these steel chronograph components. You realize the intricacy of what has been accomplished. It's deeply impressive and profoundly beautiful. So this watch with a full clasp, white gold case, a dial with white gold and lacquer, and a movement that is, metaphorically speaking, the gold standard, the complete modern Patek Philippe chronograph. That said, in the modern era, Patek Philippe's probably better known for one model family than any other, and that's the Nautilus. But if it were known for 2 model families, that second one would be the long-running 5960. Now, this is actually the 5960 in white gold. It is the 5960 01G, is launched in 2017, and it's a bit of a sportier take on the 5960. Not quite as sporty as the steel models, but you can see here that the hands have a different shape. The indices have been reprofiled. We have a lovely matte blue dial base and no shortage of luminescence. As ever, the case here in white gold is 40.5 millimeters in diameter. We've got these tribute style tasti tondi fluted and rounded chronograph pushers, which is a nod back to the 1463 chronograph of antiquity. The bezel is concave all the way around to pare down the visual bulk of the watch. We've got the bullseye down at 6 o'clock with the superimposed chronograph minute and hour hands. And then we've got a little day-night indicator, so you know, for example, whether you're looking at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. We have an aperture-style annual calendar, so you've got your day, your date, your month, and there's a little power reserve indicator below that for the power reserve, which is automatic winding and up to 55 hours. Now, on the reverse side, the movement, vertical clutch and column wheel, free sprung, accurate to -3 +2 seconds a day. The column wheel makes the actuation crisp and one of my favorite features and one of the least advertised on this watch is that it's actually a flyback chronograph, so you can reset and restart without first stopping. The annual calendar is adjusted by 3 pushers in a row. It need be adjusted only once during the jump from February to March each year. Back in 1996, Patek Philippe created the first ever annual calendar, and so that system is very distinctive of the brand. The finishing of the movement will not disappoint. You can see it as a Gyromax style free-sprung balance, here a silicone hairspring, and a 4 Hertz beat rate. We'll throw it on my wrist of 16 centimeters circumference. Take note, this has a quasi Calatrava pilot look, as it's got some of the aesthetic of the pilot watch, and I'll show you the pilot watch right here. This isn't strictly speaking an annual calendar flyback chronograph pilot watch, but it's definitely a nod and a wink to that design direction with the Calatrava pilot clevis style counterweighted buckle and the contrasting stitch calfskin with the crosshatch. Now, ergonomics. 40.5 millimeters in diameter. This is hardly an oversized watch. It wears snugly on the wrist when strapped down and sits well. You could wear it on a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference. On my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, it's a great match. And this really is one of the great Patek Philippe model families of the modern era. Now, since I teased it, I may as well show you next the 5522A. Now, this was a special edition for the New York Grand Exhibition back in 2017. 600 pieces, 42 millimeters in stainless steel. We have that same granular matte blue dial that you saw on the 5960-01G, but we have these blued broadsword style cathedral hands, and the lume on this watch is blinding for a Patek. It's a real sports watch through and through. Also a rare application of a caliber 324 automatic with center seconds and no date. The case is simple and strong. Patek does its pilot-style watch as well. Again, we have that clevis-style buckle, but here it's in stainless steel to match the case. And the case on its reverse side, if you look carefully, you can see the ghosted Patek New York 2017 logo. 45-hour power reserve, automatic winding, anti-magnetic silicon, and again, that -3 +2 24-hour accuracy attestation. We have an obvious set of pins that are used to locate the balance cock on the base plate. You can see all 3 of those pins have been black polished on their top, a feature I really enjoy on Patek Philippe watches. Polished pins are always a mark of true refinement and attention to detail. And again, the Gyromax style balance. It's a really good looking watch, the ultimate minimalist Patek Philippe sports watch design, and a rare Patek Philippe sports watch in steel that's neither an Aquanaut nor a Nautilus. I do play favorites when it comes to Patek watches, and I have to admit I was never really in love with the 5205 until this model, the Dash 13. This came out in 2018, and it takes the 40 millimeter case and makes the most of its beautiful hollow buttress-like lug profiles, the graceful sloped concave bezel, and finally gives the watch a dial to match the sexiness of its sinuous case. The dial features gradient blue, lighter at the center, dark at the edge, and then it's a sector design with the sector created entirely using polished chapter rings and white gold faceted hour indices. Now there is some luminescence here, and I'm going to show it to you now. Just a little bit. It's an annual calendar and a moon phase with a 24-hour subdial. So we have the day, the date, and the month. We have the moon phase down at 6 o'clock. We have the 24-hour dial, and you'll note that as I move the time forward, that little 24-hour hand advances. So am I looking at 6 p.m. or 6 a.m.? That matters for setting the watch safely. You can see I'm looking at 1800, that's 6 p.m. So I know it's not time to use these pusher adjusters. To use the pusher adjusters, what you want to do is, if we're setting the watch with the calendar first, roll through midnight, and Patek recommends setting to 6:30 a.m. on its annual calendars and perpetual calendars. And now you can use the pusher adjusters to safely set the calendar, because you can see the time is past 6 a.m. right there. And the design of this case really gets lost online, where you see a lot of these soldier shots. Very rarely do you see the awesome grace of those lug profiles. And Patek makes its own cases. Super impressive to be able to make them so nicely. Here's one from 2023 that just dropped. part of a long-running series dating back to the 1992 reference 5000 Calatrava. This is the 6007 in white gold. Now, there are three different versions this year. What you're looking at right here is the -001. These are automotive-inspired Calatravas that are 40 millimeters in diameter, about 49 millimeters lug to lug, and they have these really strong integrated and then rounded lug profiles. This is all in gray gold, which is the gold that Patek uses, meaning you don't need to rhodium plate it, and it's white all the way through. In other words, it's the good stuff, an 18 karat that never needs any help. The watch has radially arrayed numerals in white gold on the dial, and you can see that the hands are blackened white gold to match. There's a lot of lume here, and it's easy to read in the dark. And being a modern 26330 SC movement, it does feature hacking seconds and a quick set date. The watch is designed to look like the dashboard instrument of a sports car from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and you definitely get that with a racing track outboard, much like the Omega chronographs of the late 60s through mid-70s. You've got that staggered sort of checkered flag motif, and then we've got a carbon pattern at center. That's how Patek describes it, and an embossed carbon pattern on the strap. This is actually calfskin leather. What you're looking at is a stitching pattern that is sort of hot stamped. Then we have a contrasting yellow stitch to match the dial, and we have a lovely signal yellow underside with no crimping, no gouging, a brand new Patek Philippe factory strap, a matching spade style faceted white gold pin buckle, and that automatic winding caliber, a 26330 SC. Technically, it's the same as the older 324, so 45-hour power reserve, automatic quick set date, anti-magnetic, free sprung, -3 +2 second accuracy, a great deal of hand finishing to a high grade, but fundamentally the only difference here is the hacking seconds. Now, it's a big watch, although flat at under 10 millimeters. It is almost 50 millimeters lug to lug, so it wears broad across the wrist, which is why I recommend this particular sporty Calatrava for a wrist my size or larger, 16 centimeters circumference or up. Do you like sports watches? Well, I've got a great one right here. The original Nautilus chronograph, the 5980, bowed back in 2006. In steel, it was discontinued for 2014 in favor of the 5990, which is a Nautilus Flyback chronograph that also includes a travel time function. Now, the travel time function here is supplemented by a new blue dial. This is the 5990 1A011 that came out in 2020, now with a blue gradient dial, different from the gray dial of the original 5990. It's only about 11.8 millimeters thick as I measure it, and 40.5 millimeters around, although there's a couple of different measuring reference points, but diagonally, not including the trigger, it's about 40.5. Pardon me, did I say 11.8? These are 12.8. Now, it's 120 meters water resistant. It's automatic winding, full bracelet, stainless steel, well loomed. You've got a date up at the top. You've got a 60-minute chronograph minutes register, which I love because a lot of chronograph minutes registers are just 30. You got the flyback function, reset and restart without first stopping. Local and home time AM, PM windows that will change color to let you know whether you're looking at day or night. And because you can hide that second hour hand, you can really clean up the dial when you have no need for it. Column wheel, vertical clutch, manufacturer chronograph caliber. And you can see it's been nicely decorated. It's also properly sized for the watch. A feature that's just been introduced on these is the new quick release system for a micro adjust. You push the button and you slide in or out. So these new Patek 5990 bracelets have a micro adjustment that's trigger actuated on each side of the clasp, a huge upgrade on the traditional Nautilus clasp design. Twin trigger release, Calatrava cross, Maltese would be Vacheron, perish the thought. The dial's high grade with the indices and the hands being made of white gold, and you get the same degree of immaculate and excruciatingly intricate hand finishing on every metal surface that you expect from a Patek Philippe Nautilus. This is as good as it gets. And again, 120 meters water resistant. This one's ready for a late summer swim. Now, my favorite modern day Patek Philippe was for a long time the 5235G, and now I go back and forth between whether it's actually the 5236 or the 5235. So let me make the affirmative case for the 5235. This came out in 2011, at least it was announced then. It wasn't readily available on the market until 2013, and due to its high technology, a full silicon escapement, for example, it wasn't actually available in volume on a regular basis till about 2015. Now, this is the white gold model that was in production from 13 to about 19 when the rose gold model took over. It's 40.5 millimeters, and you can see pre-owned watch. We haven't done any refinishing. We haven't polished it down. We haven't reduced the case lines as issued from the factory. So there are some hairlines here that could be refinished if you want, but we prefer to sell the watch undiminished. 40.5 in diameter. You can see it features that 3448 conical bezel angular lug design from the historic 3448 and 3450 perpetual calendars. The dial features an aperture style annual calendar with day, date, and month. The dial is silver in several different textures. All the printing is done in blue. It's a regulator, so like a regulator clock, which was the inspiration here, you have the hours, the minutes at center, and then the seconds down at the bottom. And this was one of the first modern Patek movements to feature hacking seconds. The dial features a brushed, almost stainless steel-like aesthetic from top to bottom. Then there's a concentric pattern in each of the silver sunken sub-registers for your seconds and your hours. Then we got a track outboard with a brushed light silver. And then we have an engraved Patek Philippe logo that is unique to these models. You can see that the buckle is also unique. It's a vintage style Patek Philippe buckle conventionally, but this one features a full folding clasp, which was actually an upgrade optionally available. So going from that vintage style pin buckle to a full folding clasp means this is the only example of a 5235 G or R that I've ever encountered that includes a folder rather than a pin buckle. On the reverse side, this movement was all new with the model. It is the production realization of some of the advanced research technologies from the 2000s. So we have the Oscillomax and Pulsomax lever and wheel assemblies in silicon, unlubricated for long life and low friction. And then we have the Spiromax anti-magnetic silicon hairspring. We have a micro rotor in 22 karat gold that opens up the case back. Most center rotor automatics, I'm going to pick on the 5960 a little bit here. You can see how the winding bridge in the rotor covers half your view. With a micro rotor, that's not a problem. Also, the micro rotor means that the rotor and the winding system are in the same plane as the other bridges. By the way, look at that anglage. And that keeps the watch thin, but it also gives you the convenience of automatic winding. And this watch has a 48-hour power reserve. The movement's also properly sized for the case. Being over 30 millimeters in diameter, it really fills the case back. Whereas older movements, like the 324, are just inherently a lot smaller in diameter. We also have this lovely crescent profile as we run down from the barrel across the train wheels down to the escapement. You can see how it's a crescent that sort of traces the arc of the space left by the rotor and the balance cock. Just a really special watch with that regulator separation of hours, minutes, and seconds, the annual calendar, the evocative historic case, and this rare example with a folding clasp, the only such that I've encountered. It looks great too. On the wrist, this is a perfect fit for me, and if your wrist is anything like mine, it's going to be a perfect fit for you. It's also low flush and a great dress watch, but being mostly silver and blue, it can be worn casually. What a machine. Anytime you're in the presence of a Patek Philippe watch, you're in the presence of somebody's grail. But among Patek Philippe timepieces, this is what qualifies as a grail among grails. Launched in 2001 and built through 2013, this is the 5002 Sky Moon Tourbillon. So what do we have here? Well, we have a watch that was made at most in 10 copies per year, and there are examples in white gold, platinum, yellow gold, and rose gold. They're out there, and you could see that this being the platinum example, only about 20 to 25 in platinum exist in the world. We have a guilloche dial with the Calatrava cross. We also have an engraved case featuring the Calatrava cross. You could see that the lugs feature screws and bars holding the straps onto this massive watch. But unlike the larger 6002 that followed in 2013, this is still 42.8 millimeters. You could wear this 12 complication monster. I could wear this 12 complication monster. There's a platinum clasp to match. Now, why have I covered the dial? It's because until, I believe it was the 5003 of 2020, every Patek watch that featured a tourbillon either hidden on the case back or actually sandwiched between two separate dials, and that is the case here. On the reverse side, we have a sky chart showing you what you will see over your head at the Patek Philippe manufacturer at night. So we have the stars, the Milky Way band, the constellations, and inside this little oval with directional notation, you will see what is visible in the sky that night. We have the orbit, and we have the phase of the moon, and we have a lunation, which is basically one full cycle of the moon. We also have sidereal time, which is defined as the passage of one star across a meridian of longitude 2 times. And of course, we have a set of hands that also turn with this dial. And I will demonstrate that. You can see there are several superimposed sapphires to make that happen. Now, inside the case is the tourbillon. It's not a tourbillon for peacocking, it's a tourbillon for precision, which is why it's free-sprung, adjusted in 6 positions, and equipped with an overcoil. We also have a dial featuring a retrograding date, a perpetual calendar, and a moon phase with little white gold moons. And then we have a minute repeater. And what I will do is I will attempt to set the minute repeater to 12:59. We have the caliber R27 inside the case. It's the R27T. It has many functions. We'll try to set this to 12:59 for the maximum chime. There you go, the Patek Philippe 5002 Sky Moon Tourbillon. Doing a wrist shot, you can see the watch is large, but I could wear it. A watch like this is always designed to be seen. This is definitely one for communicating your connoisseurship to another person who knows what it is. The guy looking for a Nautilus, and just a Nautilus, he'll probably miss this on your wrist. But the guy who's into this type of watch will know, and that will be a conversation you will enjoy. If you love this watch or any in this episode, reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.